My son said, "Mom, just sign it, it's easier this way." He didn't realize I'd already filed a quiet title on the $700.00 K property. My son stood over me with a pen in one hand and a stack of papers in the other, his eyes scanning somewhere above my head, as if even looking at me was too much trouble. "Mom, just sign it, it's easier this way," he said, tone flat, mechanical, like this was just another transaction he had to push through before dinner. Easier for who, I wondered, but I said nothing. I looked at the pen. I looked at my own hands, wrinkled, veined, shaking not from weakness but from restraint. I had cooked for him with these hands, dressed his wounds, held him through fevers, and now they were only good enough to sign away what little dignity I had left? My daughter-in-law let out a breath of irritation behind him. She crossed her arms and walked into the room like she owned it. Maybe in her mind she already did. "Sign it quickly," she said, smirking, her voice dripping condescension. "And maybe, just maybe, I'll still be able to love you after this." There was silence after that, heavy, dense. My grandson walked past with his headphones on, not even looking my way. The house smelled of fresh paint and expensive candles, not like home, not like the lemon polish I used to wipe along the banisters every Sunday. "She does not understand," my daughter-in-law muttered to her husband, right in front of me. "She thinks this is still her house. She thinks she matters." She turned to me again, this time louder. "We're trying to help you. A care facility would be better. You'll have your own room, your own space, people your age. You won't be in our way anymore." My way? I wanted to laugh. They were the ones who moved back in when they could not afford their mortgage. They were the ones who asked for help with the kids. They had cooked 2 dinners in 6 years, but now I was the problem? I was the thing to be handled? He laid the pen gently on the table, like a weapon disguised as an act of kindness. "All you need to do is sign right here, Mom," he said. "We already talked to the agent. They have a buyer ready. It is a good deal. We can all move forward." Forward. That word stung more than I expected, as if I was the anchor weighing everyone down. And friends, if you feel justice deserves celebration, smash that hype button. Let us keep stories like this alive, echoing far, far away. Your support helps us bring understanding and love to those who deserve it. Thank you so much. Keep listening. I picked up the pen, not to sign, just to feel the weight of it. And in that moment, I felt the weight of every lie, every slight. Every moment they looked through me instead of at me. They used to ask me for everything. When he scraped his knee, when she forgot how to boil rice, when the mortgage fell through, and now they wanted me silent, invisible, gone. "You don't need to read it," she snapped. "It's just legal language. You wouldn't understand anyway." "Try me," I said quietly. She blinked, surprised I spoke. My son sighed, as if I was being difficult on purpose. "It is just the title, Mom. We need it in our name so we can manage things more easily." "And then?" I asked. He looked confused. "Then what? What happens after I sign?" She stepped forward. "We sell the house. We split the proceeds. You go to a place with nurses, with people who can, handle your needs." "And what about my needs now?" My voice cracked slightly, not with fear, but with memory, of nights sitting up with sick kids, of years working double shifts to keep this roof over our heads, of the letter I had found in the attic just last week, written in my husband's shaky hand, leaving everything to me. They did not know about the letter. They did not know what else I had done. She scoffed. "This is not about your past. It is about our future. We need this. You are just in the way." Just in the way. I looked around the room, at the wallpaper I chose, the curtains I hemmed myself, the fireplace where I held his father's hand during the first winter we nearly froze. "You will not be homeless," my son added quickly, perhaps realizing how this sounded. "No," I said, placing the pen back down, slowly. "I will not." They both stared at me. "What does that mean?" she asked, voice sharpening. I stood up. It took a second. My knees ached, but I straightened my back until I stood taller than both of them. I looked my son in the eye for the first time in weeks. "It means you should have asked yourself who this house really belongs to," I said. Their silence was louder than anything they had said all day. I walked out of the room, leaving the papers unsigned, the pen untouched. Behind me, the weight of their plans crumbled just a little. They did not know it yet. But they would. It was not always like this. There was a time this house was filled with warmth, not whispers, with the scent of biscuits rising in the oven, not tension thick as smoke. There was a time when I was not a burden, but the foundation, when my name meant something more than an inconvenience on a deed. I remember the first day we saw this land. It was just soil and scattered trees back then, no pavement, no porch, just Mississippi earth and promise. Marcus stood beside me, his uniform still bearing the faded stains from a war I wish he had never gone to. He had served as a medic in the Gulf War, patching up boys who would not live to see 30. He had seen more blood than any man should, and when he came back he said only one thing: "I want to build something that stays." We cashed in his service benefits, every dime, and still it was not enough. The bank wanted a name with a strong credit line, and Marcus had spent too long helping others to have any of his own left, so I signed. My name, my history, my trust. He called it our forever house, said we would grow old together in that front porch swing. That swing still creaks when the wind picks up, and sometimes I imagine him there, his coffee cup, his book, his silence. When our son lost his job in 2008, Marcus was already gone. I sold the last of the farmland my parents left me to help him stay afloat. I did not hesitate. You do not when it is your child. I helped them refinance their first condo when the market crashed. They never told their friends, said it would make them look weak. But memory is not a currency people respect until it benefits them. These days they call me old-fashioned, mock the way I keep his photo in the hallway, say the cross above my bed makes guests uncomfortable, say the smell of my incense brings the price down. I am not tech-savvy, no. I have never sent a text, never posted a story, never once logged into an app. I learned to bake bread with my hands, not a screen. I call on the landline, I read real books, and I write letters on paper. That, apparently, is enough reason to be cast aside. Mom can't use the thermostat without calling us, my son once joked to his friends. She still keeps paper bills, my daughter-in-law added, laughing. She writes checks. Can you imagine? They said these things while sitting on the couch I sewed cushions for, drinking coffee from mugs that still bore our last name in cursive. They do not see contradictions. They only see obstruction. One time I overheard her on the phone with the agent. Yes, we'll remove all the old decor. That photo of the military guy, yes, that's her husband, I know. We'll take it down. It spooks people. That military guy. The same man who used his bare hands to keep strangers breathing. They removed his photo from the living room last month. Said it didn't fit the aesthetic. I found it under the sink. I hung it in the laundry room. When I protested, she looked me in the eye and said, "You're not exactly helping the sale, you know." Helping the sale. As if my entire life was now a liability. My wrinkles, my beliefs, my memories, collateral damage in a real estate deal. They tell me the kitchen is outdated, that buyers want open plan, white marble, not dark wood, and hanging spoons. They say my curtains are too floral. My wallpaper is too grandma. That word, they say it like a disease. Sometimes I hear her whispering in the hallway. She's just in the way. People don't want to see someone like her when they tour. It's depressing. They do not see the years, the love, the sweat that's soaked into these floorboards. They only see square footage. I once heard her say, "I bring the energy down," that I am a bad omen for young families who might want to move in. She said all of this while using the mixer I got her as a wedding gift. There is no place for old women in their perfect, clean listings. We wrinkle the fantasy. They call it downsizing, call it transitioning gracefully, but it is erasure, slow and polite. The kind that smiles while moving your things to the garage. When I offered to bake cookies for the open house, she laughed. "We're going for a more modern vibe," she said. "The oven I used to feed them from is now too vintage for her taste." And yet, when the electricity bill is high, I am asked to help. When their daughter needs a ride home, I am good enough. When no one wants to clean up after dinner, I become visible again. But never when it matters. Never when my opinion could inconvenience their plans. I have become the ghost in my own home. Whispered about, ignored, tolerated, not embraced. I asked once if I could invite the ladies from church over. She rolled her eyes. said it would look like a nursing group meeting, said I should be mindful of the image. The image of what? A family? A home? A woman who gave up land, sleep, savings, pride? No, that is not marketable. They keep asking me to let go, to trust them, to believe they know what is best. But I remember what Marcus said the last time he held my hand, the day before he passed. Do not let them forget who built this. And I have not. Not for 1 second. I do not think they meant for me to hear them, but the walls in this house, my house, have ears, and I have learned how to move like a shadow. It was late. They thought I was asleep. I had gone to bed early, left the dishes half done just to see how long they would sit there. I crept down the hallway, barefoot, like I used to when my son was little and had nightmares. Their voices leaked from the kitchen, low, clipped. My daughter-in-law was the first to speak. She is not going to sign it. You saw her face. She is stalling. She is scared, my son replied. It is just a matter of time. We just have to be firm. No, we have to be smart, she snapped. We cannot keep waiting for her to suddenly see the light. If she does not sign by the end of the month, we go to Plan B. Plan B. I leaned closer, my fingers curling against the hallway wall. She has no power of attorney anymore. You said that expired. It did. But we can petition for guardianship, claim she's no longer competent. It will take some paperwork, but once it is filed, we can transfer the property ourselves. Silence. Then my daughter-in-law spoke again, voice syrupy cold. We just say she forgot to eat, that she repeats herself, that she wandered off once or twice. Enough red flags, and the court will grant it. My son hesitated. You think it'll work? She laughed. I've seen it done. Once we're her legal guardians, we'll have full control. Sell the house, move, put her in one of those memory care places where they let her crochet and eat Jell-O. Memory care. That phrase sank into my bones like frostbite. I backed away from the wall, my legs trembling, not with fear, but fury. Quiet fury, the kind that builds over years of being underestimated. The next morning they were all smiles. Happy early birthday, Mom, my son said, carrying a store-bought cake into the dining room. White frosting, no name on it. I blinked at him. My birthday's not until next month, he laughed. Well, we're celebrating early this year. Surprise! The table was already set. Candles, napkins folded into triangles, wine poured. Even the grandkids were there, dressed neatly, eyes on their phones. I thought we could take a family photo, my daughter-in-law said, to remember the occasion. But the camera was not the only thing she had set up. A man in a suit showed up 10 minutes later. I recognized the look, too polished for sincerity. Briefcase, blue tie, charming smile. This is Mr. Hill, she said, gesturing. Just here to help with some paperwork. Nothing stressful. He shook my hand. Pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Lee. We're just going to review a few forms to streamline some things. Nothing binding yet. I glanced down. The stack was thick, clean, printed on crisp white paper, highlighted sections. Sticky notes pointing to signature lines. I noticed one that said Declaration of Incapacity. Another labeled Transfer of Deed. I did not sit down. My son's smile faltered. Mom, we're just trying to protect your future. This is to ensure you're well taken care of. Don't you trust us? My daughter-in-law added sweetly. It is just a formality. I looked at them. At the suit of the cake. They had orchestrated an entire event to manipulate me into signing over my life. And yet, I smiled. Because I knew something they did not. Let them play their games. Let them celebrate too early. Let them think I was cornered. The truth was coming. And it was wearing steel-toe boots. They thought I spent my mornings wandering, that I had no purpose, just old feet tracing the same sidewalk over and over like a scratched record. She likes the air, my daughter-in-law once said, half laughing, as if breathing was all I had left to do. But I was not walking aimlessly. I was walking with memory and with a mission. Every Wednesday at 10:00 a.m., I passed the bakery, nodded to Mrs. Coleman sweeping her porch, and turned the corner toward the old municipal building, the one with faded white columns and a cracked eagle above the door. The town clerk always greeted me kindly, though by now she had stopped asking why I came. She knew. 3 years ago I filed the first request. It was after a summer night when I found a folded letter in Marcus's Bible, the one he always kept near the bed. The paper was yellowing, but the seal was still fresh, the official insignia of the state of Mississippi. It was a commendation, signed by the governor himself. Marcus had been recognized for battlefield valor. Unarmed, he had carried 4 wounded soldiers through gunfire to the extraction point. He had never mentioned it, not once. I sat there with the letter in my lap and cried until the sun came up. He never wanted a statue, never wanted glory, but I knew then what he would have wanted: to be remembered, properly. So I started gathering what I needed: photos, military records, personal testimonies from the men he served with. Yes, I tracked them down, wrote to them by hand, and some wrote back. A nurse from Kuwait, a sergeant from Texas, all remembered him, all said the same thing: he never asked for thanks, but we would not be here without him. I compiled everything into a binder, 50 pages thick. Then I filed a petition to the Mississippi Department of Archives and History. I requested that our home be registered as a protected state heritage property. You see, Mississippi law allows homes to be recognized not just for architectural value, but for cultural and historical significance, especially if a resident made verifiable contributions to state or national service. Marcus did, so I made the case. They asked for more documents. I provided them. They asked for affidavits. I secured them. They asked for a site inspection. I welcomed them in, served coffee, told them stories of my husband that I had not said out loud in 20 years. It took time. But 2 months ago, I received the sealed envelope. The designation was approved. Our home, my home, was now classified as a Mississippi historical property under the Veterans Legacy Preservation Act. That meant something very specific: no structural changes, no commercial development, and absolutely no transfer of deed or sale without the explicit notarized consent of the registered primary caretaker. That was me. It had always been me. But I went one step further. I created something called the Gulf Honor Preservation Fund, a nonprofit trust with the sole purpose of maintaining and preserving homes tied to decorated veterans in small-town Mississippi. It sounded official because it was. I opened a separate bank account, registered it with the state, filed my articles of incorporation through a legal aid center downtown where they help old folks like me for free. I made myself the sole founding board member. Then I transferred the secondary stewardship of the house, not ownership, but control, to the trust. So even if someone forged my signature, the sale would be flagged by the Secretary of State's property database. I never signed a single document that would give them legal hold over this house. Not one. They were dealing in illusions, and I let them believe it. Even if a judge granted guardianship to my son, the trust had its own legal protections. They would need a court order just to move a fence. And I said nothing. I kept baking biscuits. I kept folding laundry. I let them laugh at me for writing checks and using coupons. I let them think I was a relic, a stumbling block in their modern life. I smiled when they told me to sit and rest. I nodded when they told their kids not to end up like grandma. I stayed silent when they had their meetings in the dining room, whispering like I could not hear. I made tea for the lawyer when he came for my birthday. But every night, I sat with my folder, updated my records, watched the approval progress through the state portal on the librarian's computer. There is a kind of power in silence, the kind they never see coming. The week before the open house, I received another letter, this one from the Mississippi Office of Historic Preservation. A final confirmation: signage would be mailed within the month. An official plaque acknowledging Marcus's contribution and the home's designation as a legacy site. They would not know what hit them, and I would not need to raise my voice to make it happen. The invitation never came. I found out about the open house from the realtor's website, a listing with glossy photos of my home, my curtains, my garden, my floors, cropped and brightened, scrubbed of all memory. The description read, "Charming historical aesthetic, with potential for full renovation, perfect for young families." I wasn't mentioned. Neither was Marcus. The night before the showing, my daughter-in-law came to my room with a folded apron and a patronizing smile. "This is just for tomorrow," she said, laying the fabric on my bed like it was a peace offering. "Helps create a clean image, you know, less distraction. The buyers want to see potential, not," she gestured vaguely, "history." It was a beige apron, starched stiff, with lace at the hem. Something out of a magazine shoot, for a retro maid. I said nothing, just looked at it. It's just pretend, she added, and you'll be in the background. We'll say you're here to help stage the place. Neutral, tidy, classic. It sells better that way. I wanted to ask her if she ever once thought about what this house meant to me, but I did not. I had no intention of playing along, but I had every intention of being there, so I put on the apron. I tied it over my Sunday dress, the one with tiny blue roses, and brushed my hair into a simple bun. Not for them. For me. By 11 a.m., the house was full of strangers. Young couples in pressed jeans and realtor smiles. One woman with a designer purse trailed her fingers along the banister, the very wood Marcus and I had sanded by hand. A man in a blazer poked his head into the laundry room and muttered, "Definitely needs gutting." I stood in the corner of the dining room, watching them sip wine from my crystal glasses. No one said hello. No one asked my name. A young woman tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Do you know where the host is, and can you check the bathroom? The soap's out." I nodded, not because I agreed, but because I wanted her to look at me longer. I wanted her to see my eyes, to wonder. My son passed me once in the hallway and gave a tight nod. My daughter-in-law floated between guests like a tour guide. "This is the kitchen. We've updated some features, but there's room for modern expansion," she chirped. "The elderly woman you see? She's not staying. The house will be delivered vacant." Not staying. Vacant. I sat down on the edge of the armchair Marcus used to read in. My hands trembled, not from nerves, but from holding back a storm that had been rising for years. The fireplace was still cold. They'd turned off the heat to save money, even with guests walking barefoot on the hard. No soul in the house, just shiny floors and hollow smiles. Then came the voice, soft, clear, male. "Excuse me," it said, cutting through the room like a bell in fog. "Is there a Mrs. Lillian Lee here?" My daughter-in-law's face froze. The room quieted, just slightly, as she turned. I raised my hand. The man stepped forward, tall, gray-suited, with a leather folder under his arm. "I'm with the Mississippi Department of Archives and History," he said. "Mrs. Lee, may I speak with you for a moment?" He said it loud enough for everyone to hear. I stood. My daughter-in-law's mouth opened, but nothing came out. "Of course," I said. We moved toward the front door where it was quieter, though I could still feel every gaze on the back of my neck. "I'm here to confirm delivery of your historical designation packet," the man said. "The state has formally recognized this property as a protected Veterans Heritage Home, effective immediately." He opened the folder and showed me a certificate, embossed with the state seal. Underneath it, a bronze plaque mock-up. It read, "Home of Sergeant Marcus Lee, Gulf War medic, preserved by the legacy of Lillian Lee." I nodded, slowly. "Thank you," he smiled. "You did everything right. The Oversight Board was deeply moved by your petition." And then, louder so the crowd would not miss it, "Per state code, this property is now protected from sale, demolition, or transfer without full review and written consent from the registered steward, yourself. No exceptions." Silence fell like snowfall. I turned. My son had gone pale. My daughter-in-law clutched her wineglass so hard it cracked. The guests began to murmur. I stepped past the representative, back into the room, and slowly untied the apron. "I am not the maid," I said gently. "I am the memory." And the house? The house finally felt mine again. The man from the department did not leave after delivering the plaque. Instead, he stepped into the center of the living room and cleared his throat. Someone had started recording him, one of the guests with a phone held discreetly by their chest. The room, just moments ago filled with idle chatter and overpriced perfume, now sat silent, thick with tension. "I would like to make a brief public statement," he said. "This affects all parties present, including potential buyers, agents, and current occupants." My son tried to step forward, but the man held up a hand. "Sir, I ask for your courtesy. This is state business now." Then he unfolded the letter, reading with the solemnity of a judge. "Pursuant to the Mississippi Veterans Heritage Preservation Act, Section 4214.3, and based on verified documentation provided by Mrs. Lillian Lee, including military commendations, affidavits, and service records, This property has been officially designated as a protected historical site as of the 14th of last month. Whispers rippled across the room. He continued, "Effective immediately, this home shall not be listed, sold, transferred, altered, or demolished without explicit written approval from the Mississippi Department of Archives and History, with primary veto power granted to the registered steward, Mrs. Lillian Lee." He looked up. "Any current or future attempt to proceed with a sale or removal of the resident without this consent constitutes a violation of both state and federal historical preservation law and may result in civil penalties." It landed like thunder. The real estate agent stood frozen, her iPad halfway into her tote. A couple near the kitchen slowly stepped back, whispering. Someone turned off the background music. My daughter-in-law stepped forward, face red, voice shaking, not from fear, but fury. "This is a joke," she said. "You cannot do this. This house is ours." The man remained calm. "The house is registered under a legacy trust with legal oversight. I assure you the designation is real, binding, and irreversible without legislative review." She looked at me, eyes blazing. "You went behind our backs? You—" Her voice cracked. "You really think he was that special? That your dusty memories matter more than our lives?" Then came the sentence, the one that would change everything. "I do not care who he was," she shouted, unaware that 3 different guests were now recording. "I do not care if he dragged bodies out of a war zone. This is my house now, and you're ruining everything." The room exhaled collectively. I did not flinch, but the man from the department took 1 step forward. "Ma'am, I suggest you lower your voice. This is a recorded briefing. Everything you say is public record." Too late. The footage hit local news that very evening. A quiet segment at first, just a small feature. "Veteran's widow secures historic protection of family home." But the clip spread. It was not the legal jargon people shared. It was her face, her rage, her words, and my silence. Someone on social media added subtitles to the clip. Another added photos of Marcus in uniform. Then photos of us young, standing in front of the porch he built with his own hands. The hashtag #ProtectGrandma began on a military spouse forum, then jumped to Twitter, then TikTok. Within 2 days it was on national news. They called me the Quiet Warrior, the last stand of Mississippi, the woman who made memory a law. Reporters came to the door. I declined interviews. I had said all I needed to say. The department installed the plaque beside the porch steps. Bronze, heavy, beautiful. My son could barely look at me. My daughter-in-law locked herself in their room for hours. Their phones rang endlessly. Friends, family, strangers. The school where she worked received complaints. The real estate agent dropped them as clients. My grandson came to me that night and asked, "Grandma, is it true?" "About Grandpa?" I showed him the letter, the photos, the service ribbons. He stared at them for a long time. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" I smiled sadly. They did not think it mattered. He sat with me for an hour, just quietly, no headphones, no distractions. That was worth more than all the apologies I never got. The world had seen what they tried to erase. And the house? The house was mine again, not just by name but in spirit. They had tried to sell it as empty space, but the truth stood at the door now, engraved in bronze, impossible to ignore, and I did not raise my voice once. There is a cost to arrogance. My daughter-in-law lost her job 3 days after the clip aired nationwide. It was not the school board's first complaint about her conduct, but it was the loudest. Parents flooded the school's inbox with questions. Why was a woman who publicly humiliated an elderly war widow allowed to work with children? The board responded swiftly, citing community values and public image. She packed her desk in silence. No farewell party, no card. Her friends disappeared like smoke. My son fared no better. The real estate agent they worked with, once all smiles and bubbly emails, filed a breach of contract suit against him for misrepresentation and failure to disclose legal encumbrances on the property. The court ruled in her favor. My son was ordered to pay her commission in full, plus damages for wasted marketing expenses. He tried to appeal. He lost. But that was just the beginning. Once the case went public, the IRS started sniffing around. Apparently there were discrepancies in his tax filings. Undeclared gift income, improper deductions, and a curious little offshore account he had not bothered to mention. The same account they used to vacation in Florida last spring, while I stayed home watching their dog. An audit was opened, then a formal investigation. He stopped speaking to reporters. He stopped speaking to me. The day they left the house was not dramatic. No screaming, no tears. Just cardboard boxes stacked by the front door and a truck that idled too long in the driveway. She did not say goodbye. He tried. He stood by the porch steps, holding a suitcase in one hand, his eyes avoiding the plaque mounted just to the right of the door. "Mom," he started, then stopped. I waited. I didn't think it would go this far. "It did," I said simply. He nodded. "Can I at least explain?" "No," I interrupted gently. "You explained everything already, with your actions." He sent a Christmas card that year. No words, just a signature. I hung it under the plaque, not as forgiveness, but as a reminder. His shoulders slumped. For the first time, I saw him not as the boy I raised or the man who built a life I could no longer recognize. I saw him as someone who made a choice. And I had made mine. They moved into a rental on the other side of town. Smaller, no fireplace, no porch swing. The house felt different after they left. Lighter, quieter, alive. I cleaned every room myself to reclaim it. I aired out the closets, scrubbed the floors, and opened every window. The scent of pine and soap replaced synthetic candles. The curtains returned. Marcus's photo was rehung above the mantel. The mailman brought a letter from the Department of Veterans Affairs a week later, an official commendation recognizing the home's designation. Another came from a state senator's office, thanking me for preserving a legacy often forgotten. But the most important envelope was the one I addressed myself. A new copy of my will, rewritten, resigned, resealed. It did not include my son. I left the house in permanent trust, protected indefinitely under state law. I allocated the remainder of my savings to the Gulf Honor Preservation Fund, ensuring other veterans' families could safeguard their stories. I named my grandson as the trust's secondary steward, should he choose to accept it when he was ready. He came by often after the dust settled, sometimes with groceries, sometimes just to sit. "I didn't know what they were planning," he said once, quietly. "I know," I said. "They told me it was for your good. I know that too." He asked if I forgave them. I told him I had forgiven myself for staying silent so long. That was enough. Word spread about the house. Tourists came by to see the plaque. Veterans left notes in the mailbox. Flowers on the steps. A woman from Illinois sent a letter saying her brother had served with Marcus and called him the best medic we ever had. The house became more than just a place to live. It became a place to remember. A museum of quiet defiance. And me? I tended the garden. I baked again. I walked to the municipal building not out of necessity, but out of habit, smiling at those who smiled back. I never told anyone how close I came to signing. How many nights I sat with that pen in my hand, feeling shame creep up my spine. But I did not sign. I waited. And in that waiting, I found the version of myself they tried to erase. Not a burden, not a relic, a steward, a survivor. A woman who remembered everything and finally acted on it. The house is quiet in the mornings now. Not the silence of being ignored, not the silence of being pushed aside, but the silence of peace, of something held with care. Every morning, I brew tea in the kitchen where Marcus once built our shelves by hand. The sun filters through the curtains I hemmed myself, casting golden squares across the wooden floor. It feels warm again, alive. But it is not just my house anymore. 2 months after the official designation, the state approached me with a proposal. They had been following the story, how could they not? The clip had been viewed millions of times, and in its wake came something unexpected. Letters, donations, volunteers, people from all over Mississippi asking how they could help, how they could honor their own loved ones the way Marcus had been honored. The idea came together naturally. They asked if I would consider opening the house, not as a museum, not as a shrine, but as something living, a space for people to gather, to learn, to remember. I said yes. Now, every Wednesday and Saturday, the front room becomes a reading lounge. The shelves are lined with military history books, biographies, journals from veterans. Local schools bus in children to listen to guest speakers, soldiers, nurses, mechanics, anyone with a story to tell. They sit cross-legged on the rug, where my son once played with toy trucks. They ask questions with wide eyes. Did your husband save lives? Yes, I always say. Many. The back room has been turned into a small exhibition space. On the walls hang Marcus's medals, his commendation letters, photos of him in uniform. There's a timeline of his service annotated with handwritten notes from those he served with. Some of them visited in person. One man drove from Texas, left a pair of boots on the porch, and said, "He kept me breathing when no one else would." On Thursdays, we host Listening Hour, a time when veterans and their families can come, drink coffee and speak if they want, or just sit with others who understand. Some cry, some laugh. No one leaves untouched. I bake cookies, like I used to. The smell of cinnamon and vanilla now welcomes people instead of scaring off buyers. They come not for square footage, but for story. Not for profit, but for peace. The state asked me to appear on television, a local morning show. I was hesitant at first, cameras were never my friend, but the host was kind and the questions thoughtful. At the end of the segment, she asked if I had anything I wanted to say. Just one thing, I told her, and I looked into the camera, eyes steady, voice low but clear. I do not need anyone to apologize to me. I just need him to be remembered the right way. It aired the next day, and people listened. The donations to the Preservation Fund tripled that week. Schools from out of state began scheduling visits. A university offered to send interns to help catalog and preserve oral histories from other veterans' families. But the most beautiful thing of all came quietly, in a wooden crate wrapped in cloth. It was the memorial plaque, not the small one for the porch, a full-sized stone marker, carved from Mississippi granite. We placed it near the gate, beside the old oak tree where Marcus and I first sat together on the day we finished building the house. The sunlight hits it just right at dusk. It reads, "Historic Site, Sergeant Marcus Lee Home, preserved in honor by the wife who remained silent for 40 years. Every time I walk past it, I touch the stone, not out of grief, but out of gratitude. Sometimes, people ask me if I ever regret staying silent all those years, if I regret not fighting sooner. I tell them the truth. Regret is heavy, but silence, when broken at the right time, can move mountains. I did not shout. I did not argue. I did not threaten. I remembered. I endured. And I acted. Now, the children who once called me the old lady in the background sit at my table and ask if I can tell them about the Gulf War. They ask what valor means. They ask why some heroes are never on the news. And I answer them. Softly, clearly, like Marcus would have. One girl, maybe 8 years old, hugged me after a reading session and said, "I want to grow up and be brave like you." I smiled. But inside I thought, "No, darling, be braver, speak sooner, love louder, but also know this. Revenge does not always come with fire. Sometimes it comes with flowers on a porch and a bronze plaque that will outlive everyone who ever doubted you. This house, my house, is not just walls and windows. It is legacy, nailed into every beam. It is proof that even in silence, a woman can build something unshakable, and that truth, once it finds its voice, echoes forever. That's the story, child. I don't tell it for pity, and I don't need applause. I tell it so no woman who gave her life in silence is ever forgotten. So that somewhere out there, if there's another grandma sitting quiet in the corner of a house she built, someone will listen, someone will remember. Because justice doesn't always come loud. Sometimes it arrives dressed in paper, patience, and quiet truth, and when it does, oh, it's worth the wait. If you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, real stories from the quietest women in the room, then stay a while. Subscribe to Grandma True Stories. Let's keep remembering together.